Welcome back.
This is Love Your Villain, where we step into the arena and peel back the mask. The place we stop pretending we're okay and start getting curious about the parts we've been taught to hide. The angry, needy, jealous, anxious, avoidant, addicted, manipulative parts. The part that lashes out or shuts down, pushes love away, isn't broken. It's your story trying to speak. The villain you've been trying to silence is actually the part of you that needs the most love. Here, we don't shame the villain, we listen to it, get raw, intimate, and honest, while practicing being perfectly imperfect. I'm your host, Ila Casselman, and welcome.
Today I'm here on my own, solo, doing the solo thing, and today I am talking about emotions. It is emotional. We are emotional. We are emotional beings. Whoever you are, an emotional being, and everything that we do in our entire lives, whether it's our job, the friends that we keep, the partners that we connect with, how we feel about ourselves, it is all linked to our thoughts and our emotional experience. So how we feel about the thoughts that we have on a day-to-day basis. And some of those thoughts have zero emotional weight. They are fleeting thoughts that pass like ships in the dead of the night. We don't register that we're feeling that much about those thoughts. And quite likely that's because they're not really eliciting anything negative in us. They mostly feel good. And so the moment that we start having a negative attachment to the thoughts that we're thinking, that's when the shit hits the fan. So throughout my life, I have spent, like most people, the best part of 48 years trying to work out what exactly I'm feeling and what exactly is creating so much turmoil in my life. And throughout my history and the human history in general, emotions haven't really been acknowledged. They haven't really been appreciated, and we haven't had the tools to, or been taught the tools to learn emotional adjectives other than I'm pissed off, I'm sad, or I'm happy. I believe Brene Brown, author of Atlas of the Heart, has had a lot to do with that. I believe that by her mere statement that vulnerability is strength has paved the way for many women in particular who have been criticized, judged, manipulated, and oppressed emotionally, being called crazy, hard work, too much, or a lot by their parents. Not just actually father figures, but mother figures as well. And that's because they were shamed and belittled, ostracized, cast out, called too sensitive. We're all too sensitive. That is the reality of the show. Every single human being is sensitive. It's just that a lot of people aren't super in touch with their sensitivity. Some people are so sensitive that they can't deal with how sensitive they actually are. And rather than learning how to move through that sensitivity, they shame, project, deflect, gaslight, manipulate, and point fingers of blame at people outside of themselves because they can't cope with their own emotional state of well-being and their own feelings involved with their emotions. And it really does stem back. I've said it before. I'm going to keep saying it until everyone gets the message, until everyone starts listening to my podcast and the word gets out that it all starts with parents having no emotional literacy, no ability to regulate, name, or label and validate their own emotional experience. If parents have children before they have done any emotional work on themselves post-teenagehood, they have children, they will not have developed the skills to separate themselves from their parents' inability to have any emotional literacy or emotional maturity, and they will pass that on to their children guaranteed, because that's what happens. That is the cycle of emotional abuse. My deepest realization has been we have all been emotionally abused. Every single person in the whole wide world has been emotionally abused in some way or another. And we then in turn emotionally abuse people as young children, as teenagers, as young adults, because that is how we learn to get our own way, to lie, deceive, manipulate, use emotional tools against each other to get what we want. And if you are listening to this and in your silent voice, you're saying to yourself, you don't know what you're talking about, Ila, that's not me, I've never done that, then you are lying to yourself. Just if you don't think you have a villain inside of you or the deep, dark shadow side inside of you, you are lying to yourself. We all have that part of us. All of us. We all have a judgy, critical, finger-pointing, blamey, gaslighty version of ourselves. If we're not gaslighting people, we're doing it to ourselves. If we're not abandoning people, we're abandoning ourselves. We all have this dark part. And I do truly believe that the dark part is the half of us. The dark half, we've got the light half and the dark half. The dark half is problematic. The dark half is the side of us that really wants to be shown to the world, and it does that by emotional experiences, by emotional turmoil and chaos. That's how it does it. That's how it wants to be seen and shown to the world. So we have a choice as an adult. We can choose to feel out of control by it and like we have no power over it, or we can grab hold of that narrative and flip it around and turn it on its side and take control of the villain and learn how to integrate that part of us. Instead of there being two separate, a light and a dark side, we marry them up and we integrate them in unison so that we recognize its power and see that part of us comes out when we feel like we're backed into a corner, when we feel like our deep wounds have been triggered, when we feel like our intuition is speaking to us but we're ignoring it and abandoning ourselves. We can learn to appreciate the value that side of us has, and we can learn to tame it like a wild animal. We can tame it and integrate it. So when it does start to brew, you recognize, I see you there, little villain. I know why you're behaving this way. I see the core wound triggered that's happening right now, and I want to make a choice on how I behave when that wound has been triggered. I want to make a choice. That is a key word, choice. When we're unaware of our core wounds, we get triggered but we don't fully understand why, then we are out of control. We have no control and we're swimming around in a massive sea of emotional turmoil and chaotic frickin' cyclones and tornadoes. And what we want to do is calm those oceans, calm the wind down, and see the value in why we're feeling the way that we do. As children, we weren't taught that emotional expression is healthy. When I was a child in Generation X, we were taught that the adult's opinion, adult's emotional experience outweighed ours. Don't disrespect your elders. So because of that, we have a couple of generations who are emotionally illiterate. In fact, we have a whole history of the human race emotionally illiterate, which means we don't know how to identify the feelings in our body, the thoughts that we think that are creating sensations and emotional experiences in our body. And because we haven't been taught how to feel and put language to those feelings, we don't know how to express how we're feeling effectively. All we know how to express is I'm mad, I'm happy, or I'm sad. And then every single life experience gets put into those three categories. And that isn't good enough. It's not good enough to be lazy with our language. We spend so much time in school learning maths and English for that matter. And this, what I'm talking about, emotional language, should have been taught in English. But school is all about how can you be a productive member of society where you are paying tax dollars for the life that we live. How can we educate our kids enough so that they leave school, get further education, they can get an amazing job and have a family, provide, protect for the family, and live a reasonably comfortable life. How can we do that? The emotional stuff, you guys just work that shit out on your own. However, it's like a sociology experiment school, because you've got all these children from all different backgrounds, generational backgrounds, and then you throw culture and race and privilege in with that, and it's a mixed bag. But children are meant to get together in their most wildest form and mesh happily without any emotional guidance from anyone in the school environment. Now, I do know that there are schools who are trying very hard to implement emotional literacy into the school curriculum somehow, which I think is amazing. It really needs to be in every school all over the world as of the evolutionary changes that need to take place so that child abuse and emotional abuse ceases to exist. And that's my mission. I don't have children, not for lack of trying. I tried for 4 years, and unfortunately that just wasn't how things were meant to be for me. In this lifetime, I've accepted it. I understand that it doesn't happen for everybody. I didn't want to go through IVF because for me personally, that was not a journey I wanted to take. And I just felt that if I wasn't creating a baby through, call it the old-fashioned way, I'm heading into 50, so I could be old-fashioned now, which is hilarious. Yeah, if I'm not getting pregnant in the old-fashioned way, then I didn't want to do it. And so that was the gamble that I took, and I'm happy with that gamble either way. In this lifetime, I don't have a child or children to pass this wisdom that I've learned to them. I also made a very conscious decision at the age of 16 after I irresponsibly fell pregnant and had an abortion, that understanding the level of trauma that I had endured as a child, I was smart enough at the age of 16 to make a decision when I was pregnant that I didn't want to have children unless I had transcended my childhood, so that I cut the cycle and no longer passed on any of the plethora of abuse that was riddled in my family. And that's the patriarchy and the matriarchy. So both sides enmeshed and created me. And I am the cycle breaker. Proudly, I am the cycle breaker. I have overcome all of the trauma that I have endured in my life. That is how I have the ability to write the book, Love Your Villain, do this podcast, and why I feel like I am the right person to talk about the emotions with you. I was 27 when I first learned the mind-body connection between our thoughts and our emotions. I watched this docu-movie, I'll call it, called What the Bleep Do We Know? And I'm from Byron Bay in Australia. Byron was just the perfect home for this movie to take off. It's a very conscious mindset, and this movie just blew my mind. It was like I'd been thinking these thoughts for my entire life, virtually, and this movie brought it to fruition. When I first watched What the Bleep, I was in emotional turmoil. I'd just broken up with my first husband, and I was already leaning into alcoholism, but that breakup really tipped me over the edge. And we like to think that the people who break up relationships aren't hurt or damaged by their choices, but that's not true. They actually are. And they may not be feeling as victimized as the person who is left wondering why the fuck we just broke up, but there is still questioning, and there is still pain and grief. You're still grieving the loss of the person because you spent 5 years with that person, or 8 years, sometimes 15 or 20 years, going through the motions of causing yourself heartbreak, sadness, the grief of having to make the decision that this relationship didn't work out. We all want our relationships to work out. We all want to feel connected to people. We all want that amazing connection with somebody that you just feel like that's your person. And some people get it straight off the bat. They get it first go. And other people like me never really have had it. I thought I had it, but then I didn't have it because we lost emotional connection. And the reason why we lost emotional connection was because we didn't have the language to express how we were actually feeling. We didn't want to rock the boat or take responsibility for why there was some rockiness emotionally in the relationship. And we didn't have the communication skills to hear each other out so that each person could feel seen and heard. And really, we were just both in it for ourselves. We weren't like, this friendship is the little bundle of joy that we love and we want to take care of. We were like, you're not doing this for me and you should be doing this for me, and don't control me in this way, and don't tell me to eat this, and don't tell me I can't play golf. And so we broke up. And by breaking up with him, I broke up with all of his friends who I loved and adored, his family, and our lifestyle. And that was a lot to lose. And I knew by breaking up a marriage, that was definitely way more than breaking up just boyfriend and girlfriend. There was a lot more emotional attachment to that, especially because we consider marriage forever. And I guess in my eyes, it's not forever. I didn't get to witness people in relationship together like my mum and dad. I didn't learn how two people together should communicate, how they move through conflict and repair and resolve issues. I didn't get any of that. And so therefore, when I was in a very serious relationship, I didn't really see the value of the decision that I was actually making when I decided to marry. I broke the marriage up and went along my usual journey, which was, let's go out and get wasted and make up for lost time. And that's what I did. I said to myself, you're going to be an alcoholic for a year. And I gave myself the free pass to shut my feelings off and my emotions off and get drunk virtually every single day for a year, which actually ended up being longer than a year, because any addict knows that it's very arrogant of you to assume that you'll have a cutoff point. Once you're addicted to something, you're addicted, and your receptors in your brain, they're like light bulbs like this, just flashing on and off. You must drink, go drink. Anything negative that happened to me, I just drink. If I felt bad about picking someone up, even though the experience may have been completely shit, I would still hope that they would text me or call me or do whatever. And then I'd drown my sorrows with my friends. And the dangerous part about drinking is you feel like garbage, and so you drink, numb yourself out, and then you feel worse the next day. You're hungover, anxiety is through the roof, your depression is through the roof, everything is worse. And then you drink and it takes it all away. It's a magical little numb pill. And then the next day, your nervous system is even worse. And then this just keeps going and going and going. And that's why when you are an alcoholic or a drug addict, all you're doing with your booze or your drugs is you're getting yourself up to a level of normality, a level of function. You're not really getting high anymore. Obviously, the more you drink, the more drunk you're going to get over time. But to get to that point, you just need one or two drinks to feel normal. It's like me getting up in the morning and having a cup of coffee. I wake up in the morning and I'm tired, so tired, I need to drink the coffee. And then that gives me a baseline of aliveness, of awakeness. And then you go to work and maybe you're coming down off the coffee, so you're going to have another coffee. Who knows? My coffee lasts longer than that. If I have more than 2 coffees in a day, I'm going to wake up even more tired, so that I need to have the extra 2 coffees the next day. And then maybe it's going to be 3, and that's how you become fully addicted to something. Your body gets used to it, and it takes longer to numb out those emotions. Same thing happens with booze. You need more booze to get you to a level of normality. And then over that, you're going to get drunk. I remember I got to a point where I could have a whole bottle of wine and not even feel drunk. Not even feel anything. Just normal, except numb. So then I watched What the Bleep Do You Know? And there were 2 speakers in that movie. Let me just give you a little synopsis of what The Bleep is about. The premise is just basically, what the fuck do we know? The truth is not much. But what I loved about it is it started talking about how our thoughts and our emotions affect our day-to-day life, and how science had learned that emotions are chemical reactions in our body that attach to receptors to give us these feelings. They're not just some random spiritual woo-woo. It's actually a physiological experience happening in our body. That was pretty exciting for me. The whole movie follows this deaf woman and her life experience, how she'd been cheated on and all these kind of negative things, her negative self-talk, and how our thoughts changes our genetic makeup. That if we look in the mirror and think that we're old and ugly, what will be reflected back to us is an old, ugly person, because that's our perception and our belief around what we actually look like. Just like someone who's anorexic, they look in the mirror and they see an obese person, but everybody else sees this super stick waif of a human running the life out of themselves, eating nothing. But that's not who they see. Their perception of themselves is an obese person. That's the vision that they have of themselves. Is it everyone else's reality? No, but it's their reality. That's what they see. Therefore, it is real to them. And this movie just blew my mind open. And it was the first time that I really started paying attention to my thoughts and then how I felt about my thoughts. There were two people that spoke in this movie. One person is Dr. Joe Dispenza, and the other person is Candace Pert. I love these two people. I've watched this movie so many times because I wanted to learn this language, what they were talking about, quantum physics, and how this applies to me emotionally. Desperately wanted to learn about it and understand it. And so whenever I'd feel shitty about myself, I would watch What the Bleep to, and I would feel amazing afterwards. Dr. Joe Dispenza spoke a fair bit in this movie. It was my first introduction to him, and he's quite a lot younger. Not that has anything to do with anything. Sorry, Joe. And he spoke about starting your day loving life, how to create things in your life through the power of the mind, and that if you are creating stuff, you need to ask for it in a way so that you know that there is no shadow of a doubt that it has come from you, the observer, observing you. And I just loved it. I loved it so much. I wrote his little speech down. I would read it over and over and over again. So that was how I would start my day a lot of the time. Candace Pert was an amazing woman. She did not get credit for this, but she is the scientist who discovered the opioid receptor. Yeah. In the 70s, women didn't get credit for anything. So she was lucky to just be a scientist and smart enough to be a scientist in this lab where they were looking for receptors in the body. She discovered the opioid receptor wasn't just in the brain, it was all over. And she also dug deeply into finding other receptors that create emotional experiences, because obviously the opioid receptor is numbing. It numbs us. It also makes us feel pretty good, like you're in a cloud. We have opioid receptors. Therefore, we must have something in our body that attaches to those opioid receptors to make us feel euphoric. We call them endorphins. We also call them neuropeptides and neurotransmitters. Candace Pert, amazing woman. I would read this book. I think it's the best. Scientifically, what happens is we have a thought, bing, and that thought creates a neurological connection in our brain. And depending on how much emotional weight we have about that one particular thought, it will either disappear or it will be locked in. If you have another thought that's similar to that or exactly the same, two neurons wire and fire together. And over time, the more times that you think a thought that creates a certain emotional response, it will create a neural net, and that neural net becomes your belief system. So just as an example, if you were a kid running along with your mates and you fell over and you grazed your leg, the first time that ever happened, you may have felt embarrassed and humiliated. So that scab heals, and then you're running along with your mates again, you fall over on the grass, and the same thing happens. You feel humiliated and embarrassed. The more that happens, the more the neural net forms, and then you grow into an older child, a teenager, an adult, and we've all felt it, where if we fall over in the street, most of the time, yes, it hurts, but the bigger sensation is the feeling of embarrassment, humiliation. We have all of these belief systems in our brain that are formulated from us having an emotional attachment to the thoughts that we're thinking. And every thought then creates an emotional response physiologically in our body that will elicit a particular sensation that we will associate as a good sensation or a bad sensation. And that is just really simple. Good emotion, bad emotion. Positive emotion, negative emotion. And it's the negative emotion that weigh us down. It's the negative emotion that controls us. It's the negative emotion we suppress. The patriarchy oppressed emotion because it's showing your cards. Don't show them who you really are. They'll use it against you because that's what people do. They use emotional hardship against each other to get power and control. It's the nature of who we are. It is sad and fucked up, and it is a huge problem. But that's what emotionally immature people do, is they find pain points in people and then they use them against them in order to gain power and control over them. It's what governments do all over the world. It's what advertisement does. We all do it. One thing I've learned in my practice, it's much easier for people to express physical pain than it is for them to express negative emotions. And that's really what kind of got me on this journey now, is having that understanding that we're so scared of our negative emotions because we weren't taught how to utilize them effectively. We weren't taught how to express them effectively. We weren't taught to pay attention to the feelings and the sensations in our body, aka our intuition, and learn what that magnificent GPS system is telling us, our internal GPS. Like what is it telling you? When you feel the gut sensation that you shouldn't be in that relationship, but you stay in it because you've been taught to not pay attention to it by your parents and school and any other family member or adult, then of course we're going to go through life disowning our intuition, disowning our safety and regulation. Emotions are energy in motion. That energy can come out in so many different ways. It can come out as playful and fun and dancy and saucy and sexy and delicious and joyful and uplifting and alive. Or that energy can come out as dull and boring and unexciting. So there's two types of different energy in just the way that I was expressing or actively expressing emotion there. Emotional experiences are complex. The more emotional weight we hold to them. So more often than not, it's not the experience itself that is the problem. It's the emotional weight behind the experience that we resist. We resist it and it gets locked into ourselves. The more we resist it, the more amplified it becomes, and the cycle just continues. So the belief system becomes that this is much bigger than it actually is. And our perception of that emotional experience is valid because it's ours and it's our experience alone. If you're interested in learning more about your emotional self, Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, excellent book, and more sciencey stuff. Candace Pert, and now she's passed away, unfortunately. Brilliant mind. I sincerely hope that this has helped you. It's a huge topic. I hope you found it entertaining. Thank you for listening to Love Your Villain, and I'll see you next episode.